What's up, you guys? Today's animated series review is about characters from individual famous comic strips from the past teaming up to face an evil threat to prevent the world from being taken over, and I'm talking about Defenders of the Earth. Defenders of the Earth, the animated series, aired in 1986, containing one season with a total of 65 episodes. Our story begins with the planet of Mongo dying from the lack of resources, which causes Flash Gordon to crash land into the front yard of Mandrake the Magician's mansion due to a battle happening up in space. When needing the assistance of our main characters to help Flash in rescuing his wife and son as they're taken hostage under the hands of Ming the Merciless, they agreed to head over to Mongo. As suspenseful action is taking place, Flash was lucky enough to rescue his son Rick, but his wife remained yet to be saved. Unfortunately, his wife was taken to the power chair called the Inquisitor, where she was tortured to death in order to retrieve knowledge on the whereabouts of a crystal. When arriving too late, this led to an emotional farewell as Flash lays in his wife's lap. After retrieving the crystal that Ming wasn't able to obtain, they all head back to Earth, unaware Ming had also landed there and created his new base in the Arctic called Ice Station Earth. Meanwhile, our heroes also face the challenge of needing a secret base and discover a hidden location within a volcanic mountain, in which they decide to call it Monitor. Now that they're aware of Ming's location as well as his plans to rule the world, everyone decides it's best to stick together to become a team. So with that said, they decide to call themselves the Defenders of the Earth. So within the Defenders of the Earth, you have Flash Gordon, the leader of the team and space pilot; Mandrake the Magician, the second in command with the powers of illusions; Lothar, the bodyguard to Mandrake and the powerhouse to the team; and last you have the Phantom, also known as Kit Walker, the ghost who walks and the 27th Phantom. And then you have their kids, who are basically next in line, like Rick Gordon, Flash Gordon's son and the brains behind all the inventions; LJ, aka Lothar Jr., a martial artist; Jetta Walker and her pet panther Kisa, who has the powers of telepathy; and last you have Kishin with his pet Zuffy, an orphan adopted by Mandrake. Then there's Dynac X, a computer which has the essence of Rick's mother by using a crystal. And then you have some other allies like Atascadero, Mara, Castra, Ming's daughter, Prince Tebrak, Baron, Flash's friend, Morkan, Morlag, Rorg, Dr. Whitestead and his daughter Bridget, Starboy, Ubor, Zickery, Akimbo, Enigma, the Shadow Master, Theron, and Carlotta. And then you have some honorary defenders like Earl Sump, Audie and his robot companion Tweak, and Marty. And last you have some tribes part of the villages of the Phantom like Goron, who's the chief of the tribe; Ajuna, leader of the Falu tribe; the Bandar natives, Saba, who's part of the Zesnine tribe; and Partha. As for the villains, you have Ming the Merciless, a warlord; Crotan, Ming's son; Mongor, a giant blue serpent; Octon, an AI robot; Garex, the leader of the ice robots and Ming's second in command; and last you have the ice robots, frost people, the icemen, crystal soldiers, and clay people. And then you have some other villains like Endama the Weather Demon, Graviton, Adia, Suramong, Zerelda, Tychos, Kronos, Kali and other gods; Princess Astra, the daughter of Queen Aura; Jarbin, the caretaker of wisdom; the Beastmaster; Dr. Dark, Elgar, Conrak, Count Vlad, Butan, Baroness and her daughter Christina; Dr. Coram, Dr. Reynolds, the Dragon Queen; Mystic, Papa Duke, Dr. Kalahari and his 4 stunt performers; the League of Flesh and Blood; the Eternals, the Psychic Warriors; and last the Mind Warriors, consisting of Radion, Zalza, V-Ninja, Reaper, Jammerhead, and Nutraman. Then you have some random creatures or enemies like a giant maggot, a Gavorian slug, a mythical monster named Shoggoth, Quander the sea serpent, purple ooze, dragons, and dinosaurs. Throughout the series, every episode usually starts off with cover art with the episode title, kind of indicating who the episode will focus on, as some episodes don't require every character. As great as the first episode was, unfortunately the show decides to be a little all over the place and somewhat inconsistent with its direction of storytelling. The first few episodes in the beginning do showcase each individual character's origins or even their strengths as to what they can offer to the team. For example, since Rick is the inventor of the group, he creates these gauntlets for Lothar, the defense system for Monitor, as well as multiple forms of equipment, vehicles, and especially the thermal suits. Aside from that, every episode doesn't really continue off from the previous one, except for a few incidents which we'll get to later on. Because there isn't that many characters, it's best to talk about each one and their contribution to the team. First and foremost, each of the defenders are seen given their own unique vehicle or form of transportation to get anywhere in the world they desire. So starting with Flash Gordon, personally there wasn't really much about him that really stood out other than being the noble, courageous leader. Oftentimes he felt like a traditional cliche of a hero where everyone takes orders from him, which sometimes can be a bad thing seeing how only one episode shows the Phantom wanting to kick his ass for being stubborn. But nonetheless, majority of the time he takes his duties and responsibilities seriously by being the one who mostly does his battles in the air or in space. And one of the more interesting scenarios he went through is fighting 4 of his own clones. Next, you have Mandrake the Magician. Now this character is surprisingly underrated and possibly the most important member of the team. If it wasn't for his illusions and magic tricks, half the time the defenders would have gotten their asses kicked and probably died. He plays such a pivotal character that some scenarios heavily revolves around his mind and conscience, which summons immense concentration and pain. Because he's such a well-known magician, sometimes we get to see him perform on television or even labeled as one of the greatest acts in history, as he's requested to perform in numerous locations for important people or events. Because of his status, this sometimes leads to other envious competitors to put him out of business, and to even prove why he's an awesome character, after the death of his master, he was basically considered the next Shadow Master, which is a pretty high honor. Next, we have Lothar. Aside from being Mandrake's right-hand man and bodyguard, it saddens me to say that out of 65 episodes and with every character getting their own solo episode multiple times, Lothar only gets 1 episode to shine on his own. That's right, only 1. And this episode basically focuses on his home life back in Jamaica and how a very ritual and honorable man named Papa Duke actually uses his knowledge for power and betrays his own people. Other than that, Lothar practically hides in the background. However, this is not to say that he's not a good asset to the team, because he is in some sense. His strength, his commitment to put others before him, his handy-dandy rope really comes in clutch during climactic events. He's such a cool character, but too bad he doesn't get the credit he deserves. Last but not least, you have the Phantom. This is kind of a no-brainer, but the Phantom is by far the coolest and most badass character in the show. For starters, not only is he a really chilled out guy who has the utmost patience and respect within the animal kingdom, but he practically has the best storylines within the series. For example, we get to see his home life within the Skull Cave, as well as the cameo appearances of his horse Hero and pet wolf Devil. Then, if he's ever in a fight, he calls upon the power of 10 tigers, which provides strength and extra agility. Then you have the episodes where not only do we get to see his origins of how he became the Phantom, but also his fallout between his brother Kurt, who eventually becomes Endama. Then there's the legacy of his father as well as his great-grandfather during World War II. And then to top it off, when a devastating climax leads Phantom to no longer be able to continue his legacy, we get to see the tradition of passing down its powers when Jedha becomes the new Phantom. So now speaking of the kids, let's quickly go over their roles as defenders. For starters, because they're teenagers minus Kishin, who's the only child, they attend high school in Central City, where in most cases they can't join in on the action because they have a lot of homework and studying to do. Other times they're basically the type of kids who are told not to do something, do it anyways, and get in trouble, especially Kishin. No matter how many times he's not able to participate due to his age, he somehow sneaks his way in so he can help, which sometimes causes more trouble or luck, depending on the story. In other moments, they're usually seen training in the simulation room in order to learn what it takes to really become a defender in the long run. But aside from this, Rick is probably the most resourceful kid since he's into all that technology. Jedha would come in second because her mind link and telepathy with animals gets them out of danger in many episodes. LJ comes third because other than his karate kicks, he doesn't really offer anything to the team, and Kishin is just a child, so can't expect much from him. So now moving on to the subject of villains, I know I always say that some are absolutely useless, always lose, and a typical cliche. However, as of right now, Ming the Merciless is another sorry one to add to the list, and probably the least intimidating. For starters, aside from always calling his subordinates incompetent fools, most of the time he does absolutely nothing, just sits there, watches the defenders on the hidden cameras, makes false promises and deals with other aliens, and provides barely little to no threats to make him look powerful. I mean, he's even that stupid to make ice bots or icemen where all the defenders have to do is just a small punch or use heat to get rid of them. It's absolutely useless. Sure, he may capture them here and there, torturing them in jail or in the Hall of Inquisition, but some episodes have him polluting water with the oil, showcasing dying fish, or melting the ice caps. But that's about it. It's so bad to the point that even Garrix and Octon even try to overthrow him by revolting in a war because of how pointless he really is. I mean, it even gets to a point where his own son Crotan wants to overthrow his own father and actually successfully does so with the aid of Zerelda and this big badass named Suramong, who was the overlord of Mongo. Because of this, we get to see Monitor get invaded by the ice bots, which causes a big war. With the defenders somewhat defeated, the episode showcases how Crotan gets in position to marry Jedha and the resurfacing of the Zephoid race. But we're never that lucky because Ming eventually returns randomly and continues his plans of ruling the world by using many objects or advanced technology like a mind neutralizer, the jewelry of Xandun, numerous crystals, eternity stones, sacred tooth of Panthera, among others, just to name a few. But on a good note, to make up for the pathetic display Ming portrays, we actually get some pretty decent episodes involving even more powerful villains like Graviton, who has a 5-part episode searching for the necklace of Oros, which has the power to suspend time. Now, Graviton is kind of a badass, seeing how he ruthlessly enters Monitor giving 0F searching for the necklace with the aid of Hadia, the Queen of the Netherworld, while making an alliance with Ming as well, so to see the Earth hanging in the balance from being destroyed is pretty cool. The show also dives into some pretty cool random episodes that are more of a filler but do provide some interesting lessons or origins to take away from. For example, we get to learn the history of the Hall of Wisdom as this island floats in space carrying knowledge on the entire world which appears every 2,000 years. Then there's also the Orb of Immortality as it was broken into 3 pieces in the city of Atlantis, hidden throughout the world, the Book of Mysteries, the Great College of Magic where Mandrake and the Enigma learned all their powers, the Past of the Eternals, and my favorite, where the defenders are held in a court by the Illyrian aliens as they learn about the law of unfair justice, giving the ending of this episode a pretty chilling conclusion. Then you have some boring episodes like fighting vampires, dinosaurs, witnessing ghosts on a ghost ship, household helpers, the war in Esmeralda, or even traveling back in time to King Arthur's era. And just when you thought the show couldn't get any more sidetracked and all over the place, from out of nowhere the show randomly decides to get a little educational by making a few episodes revolve around alcohol and drunk driving, where Jeddah is in a relationship with someone who's always intoxicated as well as Rick who takes drugs when dealing with extreme pressure by his father and becomes too addicted to substance abuse. Both episodes hilariously shows outcomes of Kishin when he thinks drinking and drugs are cool, which I thought were pretty hilarious. As for LJ, he also goes through his own dilemmas as he transitions into a young adult with growing pains and oftentimes argues with his dad, giving us a father and son bonding moment. And then to top it off, we get an episode involving bullying, whether it's being an outcast or handicapped. Both episodes showcase the rights and wrongs of learning and understanding what it's like to be in their shoes. So now let's take a look at some relationships. Rick and Jeddah often have an on and off again romance, confusing the viewer just exactly where these two are going. Sometimes we see them flirting with each other, and other times we see them hitting on other people, especially right in front of each other, making the other one jealous. And once again, LJ only has one episode where we see him and his girlfriend Kate go through some situations of making adult decisions, as well as Mandrake and his brief romance with the Tuscadero and Flash with Kayla. This eventually leads into the next segue of emotional storylines when losing a loved one. Since Rick and Jeddah have no idea what they mean to each other, when Rick builds a relationship with Mara, although she appears here and there, in one episode we get to see her sacrifice to help save the defenders. And the same can be said about Kayla, a robot who believes she's human who just wants to have feelings, learns the essence of being a human when she also sacrifices herself in order to save the Earth, and this was actually a pretty good episode despite being a filler. And then you have other episodes where the character Audie's best friend robot companion Tweak dies as another sacrifice to save the defenders, the Phantom seeing his brother Endama sacrifice himself when he becomes a huge demon and explodes into flames, and probably the most emotional one, the origins of Kishin as we learn about how his parents died during an attack, reuniting with his grandpa many years later while also watching him die right before his eyes with another sacrifice. This allows Mandrake to finally adopt Kishin as his son, as them two always had a father and son bond anyways. And last but not least, let's talk about the graphics. I wasn't sure if my eyes were playing games with me or not, but the earlier season graphics started off really strong like a typical 80s cartoon in animation. Then, as the episodes progress, it slowly downgrades its detail as the characters slowly look worse and weak. One of the most noticeable ones are their facial expressions and Jeddah's hair, which turns from brown to black. By the time you get to the last episode, you would think that Ming would have some advantage, or some powerful villain would grace the defenders with his or her presence. Tell me, what do you think the last episode consists of? Is it A, Ming, B, his son Crotan, or C, another new badass villain? The answer is none of the above, because the last episode you see the defenders going on a ski trip and fighting a T-Rex. What a trash ending. This show can sometimes be underwhelming yet surprisingly come out of nowhere with some good episodes that include some abrupt endings. Some storylines kept me engaged wanting to know what's going to happen next, and other times I was extremely bored. The show tends to move in all sorts of random directions, making me understand that it is an awesome 80s classic cartoon, but also fails to acknowledge who the audience was intended for. Sure, every character doesn't look in unison and seem forced together by a common enemy, but there's a lot of loose ends, plot holes, and inconsistencies that really made me say that this show could have been really good had they planned it better. However, if you're looking for entertainment and lots of action, then this is it. But if you're looking for a story that makes sense, you might want to head in a different direction because it's definitely a good time pass watch. Therefore, Defenders of the Earth, the animated series, gets a B-. Thanks for watching, give a like and subscribe for more animated series reviews, and stay tuned for the next episode.